Travellers are warned to avoid the old castle of Caissie at all costs, especially during nights of full moons. Those who dare never leave the same. There's a lost look in their eyes, an invisible weight on their shoulders. No one asks what they saw in fear that it will curse them as well. It is said that the burnt stone walls speak of an old tragedy, of how on quiet nights, where one can only hear the whispers of the trees, a young lady walks into the skeletal ruins, the fire of a lantern providing enough light to guide her, but no warmth. Under her black hood covers her face, her ghostly blue eyes shine through the darkness. On those nights, the old wood creaks under her feet, even though she doesn't weigh more than a feather. The moonlight glares through a crumbled ceiling, and the wind rustles the dust of ash and bones on the floor. The young lady simply continues walking deeper and deeper into the castle, murmuring secrets that not even the stones could repeat. Those who dare speak of their time in the palace speak of her dance with ghosts, intricate steps of an old forgotten song. She dances and laughs with the moonlight, trying to forget it all, as if the wind could pick up her sorrows and blow them away, or if the shadows could swallow her pain and make it disappear into the cracks of the walls. She dances until her feet bleed, finding comfort in the pain, waiting for the one she loves to rush to her, take care of her, make it all go away. But it never happens. And when her fantasy isn't strong enough to hold her, she breaks. Every single sorrow comes out like demons into the night. Her wails are strong enough to deafen anyone, yet no one outside the castle can hear them. A villager once came out of the ruins, haunted and thin, his eyes sunken into his face. He muttered secrets no one understood and carried a bloody crown in his hand. He worked for days and then cleaning the blood off. "Daughter," he whispered before leaving the crown in the middle of the square. Shining, clean gold that no thief was desperate enough or foolish enough to grab. So it sat there until the full moon appeared, until the young lady was seen in the castle again, wearing the crown. Historically, the crown belonged to Giselle, the king's flower, a maiden who fell in love with King Richard the Just some centuries ago. She is remembered as the birther of the new nation, a kingdom she endured under King Richard. She had been a maiden when they met, back when the kingdom was under the rule of her father, a long-forgotten ruler only remembered as the cruel king. It is said that the maiden had fallen in love with the charming young Richard and helped him poison the old king. Soon after, she set fire to her palace and escaped with her love. After that, people tend to lose interest in the details of the story. They like the happy ending. There are records of King Richard marrying a noble from another kingdom, but keeping Giselle close to him. There are rumors of the castle he made for her, the songs he wrote for her, how he immortalized her forever in history. Some say that the apparition is the scorned wife who was jealous of Giselle, that her shrieks are the rumors she tried to spread in an attempt to distance the king from the flower. But no one who's been in the castle has ever confirmed the tale. On the contrary, many of them become enraged, betrayed by a ghost who they never knew. "Liar," they often yell. "She never loved King Richard, you're a liar!" They're never taken seriously, of course, as most of their rage appears behind the mask of drunkenness. The villagers simply laugh, nodding and humouring the heartbroken drunks. They don't pay enough attention to let the truth sink in, that the young lady was not some scorned, jealous queen, but the maiden herself, the only survivor of the fire, the only survivor of the old kingdom. No one remembers the old kingdom, there's only stories. Stories of how the cruel king made his people build Caissie in the scorching sun of a summer. How his kind daughter Giselle begged him to stop, to let the people rest, but he had refused. How he threw a banquet after construction was finished to celebrate his new castle, to which only he and his daughter were invited, for they were the only ones worthy of living there. However, somewhere deep under the stone, there are records. scorched little things that bleed with dry ink and wheeze with ash as they beg to be read. The forgotten words cry of how Caissie stood as a hidden treasure among towering kingdoms. A place where kings set cupbearers and landowners shared the land with anyone who needed it. A family, they called themselves. Together they built Caissie as a place of congress, to store food in case of famine or wait out besieging conquerors, to warm up during the winters or feast at the annual harvest. Caissie stood for and by its people. It was their home. Now it lay in ruin. There are nights when Giselle's cries are stronger than usual, guttural, broken sounds that those who hear it can't tell if it's a sound of grief or madness. She raves and sobs for her people, for her father who she never knew as a cruel king. To her he was Aldrich, her beloved father, the one she would observe and learn from everything he did, how he could disarm an entire army with a trade deal or gain the favour of a country with a simple dinner and a captivating tale. The only thing she never learned from him was how to play instruments, for whenever he did she would dance, often in the same square her crown had been left in. Aldrich was never a king, for there were no kings in Caissie. He was their diplomat, the weaver of peace, the one who talked with neighbouring kingdoms and protected them from war with his charm. When she wasn't with her father, she was among her people. She used to feed the hungry and help the sick. She could speak several languages and used to teach them to her children. She was a master archer, once capable of killing a fly before he could land on the food of the banquet. She was happy, and her people were too. Until the just king arrived. There is no records of how he besieged the people of Caissie, no poems of how he ordered its burning. No soul alive remembers him saying, "Live no survivors." There are ballads of the sweet romance between King Richard and Giselle, but not one song of how they met, of how the young Giselle, enraged with grief, fought until exhaustion to protect her father's corpse, of how King Richard had laughed, endeared by the young girl's desperation, and decided to save her, as heroes do. It was true that the king had kept Giselle close for a while, helped her nurse her injuries, even fell in love. He would treat her with utmost respect, walk with her, for her legs were not strong enough to hold her after the fire, and talk with her almost every day. He kept her, like a master keeps a bird caged, in his most luxurious castle, one where she could see the statues that were being raised for her, where the sky was filled with songs and tales of her grandeur, the last survivor of the old kingdom, the mother of the new nation. It was only a matter of time for Giselle to go mad, for her to whisper to the wind, for her sight to be lost on some dead point in the horizon, for her to walk aimlessly inside the castle walls for days. King Richard appointed guards to her, scared that his flower would get lost in the castle's dizzying maze of rooms. She would walk straight, turn, and walk again. The people were charmed, thinking that she was in awe of her new home, exploring every corner. No one noticed how, if one were to replicate her steps outside of the castle, they would be walking back to Caissie, her real home. Not soon after she forgot how to string words together, for she refused to speak with King Richard's tongue, and there was no one who would understand hers. She died completely and absolutely alone, with only King Richard and his kingdom to cry for her. The king had been inconsolable, grieving for even longer than he grieved the death of his wife some years later. A grand funeral had been thrown in Giselle's honour, a royal burial. Still, the drunks yell at any who will listen. "Giselle died of grief," some drunks say. "Queensley have thrown a fit of jealousy," others yell. "Listen to the wolves, they tell the truth." And so they do. The truth is that, even if her corpse was not within the walls of the old Caisian castle, Giselle died in that fire, among her people. The quiet, meek, and injured remains were only a mere shadow of the woman she'd once been. Though her skin showed no burns, her lungs never fully recovered from the fire she consumed, and despite King Richard's best efforts, he was never able to win the maiden's heart, for he was left as barely a crisp among the bones of her father. Giselle had been dead for years before she cut her own throat at the king's balcony, in front of his eyes. All the stories, all the songs, they were of the maiden Giselle, the love-struck girl that betrayed her family and people for the dashing young king. travellers are warned to avoid the old castle of Caissie at all costs, especially during night full moons. Those who dare never leave the same. A part of them dies when they hear Giselle's story. For them, King Richard is no longer King Richard the Just, the one who would fight in the front lines during wars or feed every single one of his soldiers before eating a bite himself. But instead he's Richard, the cruel conqueror, the liar, the murderer. For the only reason why he is remembered as just is because all those he treated cruelly died at his hand, never able to tell their story. Giselle is no longer the maiden, the mother of the new nation. She's a warrior, a daughter, a survivor, a woman who lived through the most painful way to die and who, drunken in madness and grief, killed the king's beloved flower. But her story will never see the light of day, for her story was burned with the old castle, among many thousand more.